G'day guys, I'm the developer of Project Skyscape, out now in early access. I hope to hear what you like, what needs work, and what you might want in future. The game currently features an introduction which should explain the basics, but there's still a lot that the game doesn't teach you, so I'm going to try and cover that in this video. We'll look at how to set up joysticks and other simulator gear, how to play Skyscape in VR, and for a more relaxed experience, how to play Skyscape with a regular gamepad. So let's get started. Let's dive into the control options to try and set up our flight stick. So right up the top here we have our pitch, roll and yaw axes. Can leave the default configurations in here for using mouse, keyboard and gamepad, but to simplify things we can just clear those out by clicking the little red X. All you should need to do to add your flight stick is click to add a new axis from a joystick by pressing this joy button. Then from the drop down box, find the device name of your joystick. You can mix and match all sorts of devices you may have plugged into your computer. Now you'll need to select the axis number from the joystick that you want to bind to this control. So you might just want to rock the stick back and forwards as you try to find the pitch axis and click through each of these numbers until the preview bar starts moving in sync with the axis that you want. If you find the sticks moving the opposite way that you want, simply tick on the invert box to flip its direction. As we move down to setting up some axes for the target designating crosshair, the issue is that I only have one analog joystick, but I may want to control things like the target designator or even head turning and things like that with that same joystick. So the way we can set that up is simply reuse the same axes that we used before and then press the mod button to add a modifier. This will be a condition that will only allow this analog axis to be used while that condition is satisfied. So for example, we'll set this only to use this analog axis while J is held. This means that the analog axis will still be steering the plane while we're trying to use it to move the target designator crosshair. So we'll have to go back up to our flight control axis and add the opposite condition of while J is not held. This will make the J key a switch that will flip our analog joysticks between two functions. And you can add as many of these as you like, and that should hopefully enable you to reuse analog joysticks in a lot of useful ways. The other alternative you have is that you can create a virtual analog axis using keys or buttons instead. So if you have a directional hat on your joystick or something like that, which is made of a few digital buttons, simply add a new virtual axis by pressing the keys button, and then you'll just need to bind a button for the negative and for the positive. And now, because I don't want the target designator to overshoot, as I'm moving I'm going to bring the speed right down, and I don't want it to slip away from us once we release the finger off the button, so we'll put the centering value right up to something very high. To play Skyscape in VR, you'll need to first make sure your Steam VR is showing green across the board for your headset and hand controllers. So make sure all your hardware is linked up properly there before you start the game. Next, just launch the game using the Steam VR option. Now you don't want to have your headset on while you launch the game initially. We're just going to be dealing with these 2D menus until we properly load the game, and then you can put the headset on once everything's initialized in VR. Once you get into the title screen, down in the bottom left corner you'll see a checkbox that says Spawn in VR. You'll want to tick that on. And when you do, you'll notice that a new option appears to play in seated mode or not. So if you're in a wheelchair or prefer to stay seated, just check this option and it will apply an offset to your head and hands. So your VR character will be at a standing eye level even while you're sitting. So with those set, just hit open play or solo play and we should be good to go. The first time you spawn in VR, you might want to open the VR calibrate options. This is where you can change the seat height if you're in seated mode, and you can also adjust the dimensions of your VR avatar to better match your real life height and arm length and things like that, to help the animations have the best chance they can at looking alright. Once you get into the cockpit, you can adjust how you're sitting by grabbing onto these handles here and moving yourself around within the cockpit until your head is lined up nicely with the HUD and everything. So for people playing with a gamepad like an Xbox controller, I'll just go over the default setup of how that works. Just move around with the left stick and you can press that in to sprint. When you get in the cockpit, the way you free look around is with the Y key by default, and as you aim your cursor onto switches And dials, the way you operate those is with the shoulder buttons, so the right shoulder to press something, and if it's a kind of switch that you might need to flip up again or unpress, then you use the left shoulder button. When you're aiming at a touchscreen keypad like the navigation communications keypad, you'll need to use the right trigger, and that's the same when using the menu. To press or click on buttons will be the right trigger. The default way the controls have been set up is that while you're not free looking around the cockpit with the right stick will instead be steering the plane by controlling the flight stick. However, while you're in this flying mode, we've also set up another condition where you can hold in the D-pad down button, and then that will enable the right stick to instead move the target designating crosshair. And by clicking that in, you can lock or unlock the contacts that you see on the radar page. Now, just to go through some important stuff on how to play that isn't covered in the introduction, once you install a weapon on your hardpoints, to have your fire weapon button actually launch that missile or fire that cannon, you'll need to set that hardpoint as active using the corresponding button that's in this row of 5 buttons here labeled W1 through 5. And if you open the stores page, that will help you see which ones you have selected, as well as how much ammunition is still in them and things like that. So to fire a missile at an enemy drone, you'll need to have the missile loaded onto one of your hardpoints. You'll need to activate the hardpoint that you installed that missile on using one of the 5 W buttons, get a radar lock using the radar page, and you'll need to use the fire weapon button to release that missile. The way the game progresses currently is that new drones will keep coming and attacking you in these waves. We can see a countdown to when the next wave will happen at all times on your HUD. If you can take these planes down, then you can try to land at the next airfield. The coordinates of the next airfield will always be in the top right of your screen on the HUD, and by using the map and navigation keypad, you should be able to get your way there. By landing at these airfields, you can collect new upgrades for your jet, which should be able to make it stronger, faster, and have more weapons to deploy against the increasing difficulty of the waves of drones that will come against you. I hope that's enough information, and I hope you enjoy Skyscape if you get it. Thank you, and God bless.